Hi, welcome to Consciousness Bootcamp, Module 4, Platform 3. Oh, it is 4, because we have 3 platforms. This is our 3rd platform, and the first part of the book, and the Ego, Instinct, and Evolution. All right, well, we're really into it now, aren't we? Before I start speaking, let's do an opening. Let's open ourselves to one another and look around the room and become aware that you are co-creating with every person in this room. Now, if you're at home, look at the screen and become aware that you're co-creating with everyone here, even though you may not know us. And you could be thinking, oh no, not them. And even if you're watching this 5 years from now, which I hope someone is, you're still co-creating with us, because there is no time or space in that sense. Yes. Okay, I'd like to start with a little story about how this definition of co-creation came to me. But first I'm going to read the very beginning of the platform. We co-create reality with the universe in a subtle dance of intention and allowance. Co-creation is the way the universe operates. Outcomes are the result of the intersection of all intention, including our own. If we consciously choose co-creation, we can overcome our own limitations and experience richer lives and more fulfilling outcomes. Now, doesn't that sound really cool?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I want that.
Oh, yeah. So what's the problem, right?
Easy to say, hard to do.
It seems that way, doesn't it? So first I want to tell you this. We co-create reality with the universe in a subtle dance of intention and allowance. Later on in the book, in Platform 8, somewhere over the rainbow, it's probably in the table of contents. If you aren't too intimidated, you can actually look at the table of contents. You say, oh no, anything that's too long. Okay, where is it? Well, somewhere in here. Walking the Path of Not Knowing. It's probably there, 559. Some thoughts about the path of not knowing on page 560 starts with that line. That's why I'm bringing it. There is a method to my madness. We co-create with the reality with the universe in a subtle dance of intention and allowance. And the rest of this is about being not knowing, and our beliefs are free-flowing manifestation of our state of being and so on. But that idea of co-creation with the universe that came as part of the thoughts on the path of not knowing, this just came to me one day when I was living in Oregon about 1999 or something like that. Out of the blue, I just sat down and these words just came out. And those were the words. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's so true. I wish I had thought of that. And then the rest of that section. But when I got the ideas for living with reality, the concepts, I was told to take out that snippet and put it right here, because becoming co-creative means that we recognize that the process of co-creation is intention and allowance. But first, let me talk a little bit about what I mean by co-creation. Now, again, I'm counting on you guys to read the book. So there's going to be a lot in the book that I'm not going to be talking about here. But you know, some of us really have gotten caught up in the idea that we create reality. And other of us have gotten caught up in the idea that we have nothing to say about anything and that we're powerless. And whichever side of that spectrum we're on, we're wrong. Because of course, nothing is so one-sided, is it? You know, in reality, life is much more complex than that. And in some ways we're powerless, in some ways we're powerful. And what is that relationship? the subtle dance of intention and allowance really captures what my experience anyway of reality is, and I think you'll agree that that's the case. It's like we can intend, I used to laugh when people talked about we create reality, and I thought, sure, stand on the desert and visualize a McDonald's, and if you visualize it long enough, it will appear. I don't think so. Not that we would really want a McDonald's in the desert. Now, it is true that if you are a McDonald's franchisor, you might be standing there at the desert visualizing McDonald's, and it might appear. However, we'd have to know that there'd be power and water at that place. You couldn't do that. And customers, exactly. What would be the point exactly with that customer? So no matter what we do, even if you are the entrepreneur who's going to say, I'm bringing McDonald's to the desert, you are still dependent on the co-creation, that the power lines have to be available, water has to be available, roads. There's the road to nowhere, there's the McDonald's that has no road to it. And so no matter what we do, we cannot make things happen by ourselves. We are always co-creating with the universe. Now, there's two ways of thinking about co-creating with the universe. We can think about it as, we're going to be decorating a house together. So we're co-creating that. Oh, do you like this? What do you love? What do you see here? And we have to work it out. Oh, no. God help us. Okay, so we actually have to get to clarity about what's for the highest good of all, which, by the way, we get to in Platform 4. So we don't have to sort out how we do that yet. So that's an obvious co-creation. If you go into a working environment, you work in an office or for some company, you're always co-creating with other employees. If everybody around you is high, you're in trouble. You can do your job perfectly, but if the information that you're getting to do your job is not right, you're in trouble. You could be a judge, and you're trying to do everything right, and if the lawyers come in and they don't know what they're doing, or they come in late, or the client comes in late, you can't control that. So, oh my God, co-creation, that means dependency. That means we all have to depend on each other, and that the quality of the job that I can do depends on the quality of the job that you're doing. So if I'm the, quote, healer, and you're the receptionist, and you don't do your job, I'm not going to have any appointments. I won't be able to heal anybody. So in a very obvious sense, when you're in a work situation, you're going to find yourself constantly having to deal with co-creating a workflow with other people. Just like in a marriage or a home, you're co-creating. You may say, I would like some peace and quiet here, but if you have a 2-year-old, you may not achieve that. I'm not going to go on to the things that people do in order to force that silence, because sometimes people get so frustrated, that they go that far, as to kill their children or to shut them up or drug them, as has happened to so many people. But there we are, family, work situation. When you're in politics, it's so obvious. You run on a platform, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do the other thing. And then you find yourself in office. And you can't do anything. Because every time you turn around, you're being filibustered, or you're being blocked in some way, or somebody says, I'll vote for this as long as you make Pinochle the state game in the state of Georgia, And you say, oh, sure. So suddenly you find yourself sponsoring a bill to promote Pinochle.
Oh, that's funny.
You know what I'm saying? And it's just that inevitable having to deal with other people's agendas. So we have agendas that we have to deal with. We have people's weaknesses that we have to deal with, because if they're not capable of doing their job, you plan on arriving in St. Louis at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and there's a breakdown, your luggage doesn't get there, you miss the plane because there's a traffic jam or whatever it is, you don't get there. Now what's even worse if there is anything worse, is that you have to co-create with the universe in an even more abstract way. Now we're just talking about people. There's weather. I mean, how many of us, because this is now, by the way, the 21st century, I assume if you're watching this, you're also in, this is the 21st century, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
That you are also in the 21st century, because I would be shocked if anybody's listening this a century from now. But
Computers will have evolved beyond being able to.
that's right. Computers won't be able to even watch these videos a century. Well, I hope that consciousness is so beyond this that they'll look at this and say, what were these people talking about? What's wrong with them? Don't they know that lip is the case? But like we in the 21st century, we are appalled that nature gets in the way of our plans. I mean, we don't account for that at all. Everything has a schedule, and that schedule is supposed to be met. Now, people in the olden days, knew about weather. They expected weather, and farmers knew. Yeah.
I mean, we're still, at our farm, we're still dependent upon the weather.
Absolutely. We're all dependent upon the weather. We are dependent upon the weather, but we don't think in terms of that because we like to think that we are so powerful. Humans have become so powerful, we don't have to worry about weather anymore. And, and then, of course, you get socked in San Francisco, right? And then everybody's going to have to blow to try to get the fog to dissipate. Or a horde of locusts arrives on your crops that you didn't plan on. There's a tornado, there's an earthquake.
A fire.
A fire. This is not part of the plan. Oh yes, it floods. You have this beautiful, pristine property on the river. It rains!
We lost a third of our crop this year because we couldn't plant because of flood.
There you go.
Was high.
There you go. But I mean, I'm a suburban person. I'm not a farmer. I'm a suburban person, and there's a flood. I mean, that's unconscionable. So what I'm saying, this humanity, we've got a lot of hubris, a lot of ego and pride, a false sense of power that we really have so much power over things. You see the parents who think they have power over their children. There are so many factors that come in. You try to have your children eat well and properly. And what do? They swap at lunchtime.
Or throw it away.
Right, or they throw it away, or exactly. And then they steal pennies from somebody else so they can go out and buy the ice cream you won't let them eat. I know it isn't pennies anymore, but that dates me. That shows you my age. There's so little... and then there are tragic things that happen that you have no expectation. You have a plan that your children are on track from the time before they're in preschool. They're in the preschool, right? The best preschool that you can possibly get. And then the kid starts using drugs at the age of 3. And... they flunk out of preschool.
They're expelled.
They're expelled. We don't account for that. We don't account, by the way, because this is co-creation with the universe, isn't it? We're talking about what is... And then we don't account for illness. That doesn't come into our plans at all. You're in your 20s and you get married and you... just assume that, you look at the guy and you say, okay, he's got about 45 years of earning potential. I can see before me the house in the suburbs, the 2.3 children, all this. Oh, yes. And the guy gets on his Harley and smashes into a tree. It's over. Sometimes it's something that seems to be even more out of the blue, like the guy is walking across the street and he gets hit by somebody who's on the Harley. You say, oh yeah, well I don't have to be on a Harley. I can control the universe because, I can be safe. Right, I'm going to walk everywhere. Right. It's amazing what can happen, and the insecurities that we have around all the things that can happen. And the older you are, the more likely it is that things are going to happen on a physical plane that you're not anticipating. And oh yeah, where are you going on your honeymoon? The hospital. I wasn't expecting that, but that's where I'm going. So this is intention and allowance, you see, is that all we can ever do is think that we're going to do something, or plan on that, or believe we're going to do it, or intend to do it. And the rest of it is pretty much out of our hands. Now, I'm going to, in our next talk, I believe it's our next talk. It's my intention to do this in the next talk. But if you've been watching CBC, you know that what I think I'm going to do is never what we're going to do. But it is my intention that next time, the second talk, I'm going to talk about the understanding the dynamics of intention and allowance in a very specific forms that are in the book. But what I'd like to talk about here is just more in a general sense of what it means to be able to be in allowance that this is the way it is, and to make some choices about being co-creative. So let's just sit for a moment and take in what I've already said. Who can feel the fear? Yeah.
I've been feeling the fear since I started reading last week. Like, this is bad information. Why am I putting these ideas in my head? Why am I reading? I mean, really, I can feel like that's silly, That is hard.
Well, what's interesting about the people who believe in the one side of the spectrum, which is that we create reality, is that they would rather suffer shame and guilt than acknowledge powerlessness. And on the other side of the spectrum, the people who are dedicated to being helpless and hopeless, they'd rather flounder in slime than acknowledge that they have any part in their problems.
Or
Isn't that
we
interesting?
vacillate. Like, I vacillate between both of those.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean-
we can carry both of those
Yeah.
ideas in us at the same time.
Yeah.
I feel blocked right now. This is a co-creation. And right now I can't say anything because nothing is coming to me, and it's not coming to me because something is blocking. So there's co-creation right there. I intend to be speaking on this topic, and I can't. I could try to force it and babble, but then I wouldn't be in the flow, and I wouldn't be doing what we believe in, which is, me connecting to higher consciousness and just sharing what comes to me. So what's the block that's come up right now?
Is it related to what you just said? Should I come up here
Yes.
and say it? Because
Just pause for a second. Okay.
I felt it when you said there are those who believe that we create our universe, and they'd rather suffer the shame and guilt, right? Because when you believe that, then you're like, oh, well, I must have done something wrong, I must have intended wrong, I must have prayed wrong, or whatever, then admit their powerlessness. And then you said those are those on the other side of the spectrum, and they'd rather wallow in the hopelessness and powerlessness than admit that they have any other part. And that's when I just felt the the block just settle in. And I can relate to both of those. I can relate to wanting to feel like I'm a victim, there's nothing that I could do, so that I don't have to admit that I was a part of the co-creation. And then there are times when I'm like, nope, I can make this happen. I just need a plan. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to learn how to do it, I'll just get more knowledge. It's going to happen. So I can relate to both of those. I don't know if that helps clear the block, but
I think that you're identifying that the block came up around that. Does anyone else feel connected to what Christine just said? If you have something to share, please come to the microphone. I know I had intended this to be a talk, but I'm allowing it to be what it is.
I noticed in that paradigm
Hang on, just wait.
Sure.
Get your mic up and then talk.
Right here, Chris.
That's fine, that's fine. There you go. Thanks.
I notice in that, when I'm in that place of wanting to believe that we can control the universe, I can control the universe, then I'm also very critical of others when they don't control the universe the way it should be controlled. Using as just a micro example of it, well, why doesn't this always run from 11 to 1? As though there's some, as though somehow in this room we should be able to transcend the reality that it's a co-creation, like somehow here we should never have the internet go down, and that's unreasonable. And you know what I'm saying? And I really can feel that it, not only the pain of the shame and the judgment, that it puts on me when I'm feeling that way, but then I project it out onto others, that there's really something wrong with them, that they're not doing it.
Oh, I love what you're saying, because when our intention is thwarted, we are always looking for someone to blame.
Yeah.
And it's usually our mothers, but,
Or our children.
yeah. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Sometimes there's like pieces flying out. And you guys don't tell me.
Are you ready for your close-up?
That's right, give me a good sigh. Okay. Well, when you said the fear, I was trying to search for what the fear is for me. So I wasn't aware of feeling fearful, because when I read about it, I actually like it, because it feels like, yes, that's real, because I've heard you can create your own reality, and I've never felt like that's it, and I've also been in the powerless, so it feels right, but it also, I think the reason why it makes me so scared is because it makes the world so unpredictable for me. And I know Chris mentioned that about wanting to believe like we have some control over things, and I guess that's what makes us do try to say, well, I can do it, forget them. Like, I know they don't want to, and I know they can't, or, whatever it is, but, I'll figure it out. And then I can feel better, like my world will be some kind of way that I want it to be.
I think it's an important point that when we know that, or when we believe we're hopeless and powerless, and we know we can't make it happen, we often look to other people to whom we attribute the power to make it happen. Well, I can't make it happen, but you can make it happen. But he can make it happen. Why aren't you making it happen? Right.
Yeah.
That's right. And many of us, do that. In our relationships, we set up the other person as the king or queen of the universe who can control reality.
Yeah.
I think I follow that.
I live with the king of control, aka my father. I follow all of the rules that he sets up. I could list 100 of them. The way you load the dishwasher, the way you lay the butter lid down, there are gazillions efficient ways to do things. And, I have to admit, most of them are smart and efficient. And the house is much cleaner now. But, so I have two emotions going on about it. One, am I just rolling over and giving up my power by following the rules? And also I feel powerless to support him not to need so much control. I don't know how to, it's just, when I broached the subject, he really hates other drivers on the road. And I said something very calmly once about a car getting in front of him, because, he always is 5 car lengths back. And so that gives other cars room to move in. And he said, well, bleeping idiot, because now he'd have to go off cruise control because this guy did this. And yeah.
Because I relate.
I know, I figured. So I just said very calmly, where else is he supposed to go when all the other cars are tailgating, not giving him the room. And his answer was, well, he didn't hear me call him an idiot. And I just didn't know, where to go with that.
I'd like to, I feel like things have opened up. I'd like to start speaking again, and hopefully I'll be able to share something about that. Because, the book talks about submission and domination. And as opposed to co-creation. And we obviously, it's not that easy. We haven't, we all have a desire to dominate. If we could be honest about it, we would find out that we're all trying to dominate in our own way. And one way that some of us have figured out how to dominate is through submission. That we find a way, if we submit in this way or that way, or we bolster their ego in this way, then they will do what we want in some other way. And so we're all looking for a way to control the universe. Some of us are trying to do it directly, and some of us are trying to do it indirectly. But what I think, what we need to be seeing is that we're coming into this platform from having already established oneness and differentiation. It's very difficult to be co-creative with someone who does not already actually subscribe to that perspective, even if they use different words or not thinking about it in the same way. Because when we acknowledge that we are one to begin with, then if your father comes up with an idea that's better than your idea, it doesn't feel like submission. It just feels like the unit in that family has come up with a better idea. That ends it. It's over. It's like, yeah, what a great idea we had, or what a great system we have to, because it was the dead giveaway was you said, of course, it's much more efficient and and the house is cleaner. It's like, oh, I so appreciate these ideas and these modes because it's making my life better, and we as a unit are more functional when there's order in the house, and when it's clean, it feels better. So that feeling of submission is gone when we have that. And if we have differentiated, we are not going to submit because we're not doing it for the wrong reason. We're not going to be going along with someone's idea because we are merging with them, or because we want something out of them, because we cleared that up last month in when we became differentiated. And so we have to really practice those steps in order to actually come into a place where we can feel like we're co-creating and that we don't feel threatened by it. Because it's the ego's agenda is to tell us that we are creating the world, or that it's the ego's agenda to have its agenda met. When we get beyond the ego agenda and start moving into that oneness consciousness, then we start thinking about what's for the best. How is this going to work out for all of us? And we get deeper into that when we get to Platform 4. So we need the spiritual preparation in order to say, I really want to co-create now, because my ego is no longer at stake. Either through my manipulation of you or my domination of you, or trying to get, because I'm really looking for what's really going to work here. And then I can actually start listening to what you have to say, because our goal is to co-create something. So the spiritual condition that we need in order to practice Platform 3s is having practiced Platforms 1 and 2. Is that clear? Does that help? Yeah. And so all of a sudden our focus is no longer on, am I getting my way? What do I want? All of which, those two, they force us into a behavior where we either dominate or submit. I feel blocked again. This is interesting. I thought this was going to be so easy to talk about, but right here is a line. Becoming co-creative can conflict with the ego's perceived job of ensuring our survival, because the ego is always looking for value. And so if we are looking for value in everything that we do, then if your idea comes forward and it seems to have more value than my idea, then my ego is upset, not only because I'm not getting my way, but because I am not getting value out of going along with your idea. And it's not always that you have an idea and it's better than mine. Sometimes it's like we bounce. Oh, you have an idea. Oh, that triggers in me this idea. Oh, this, by the time you're done, you have a completely different idea than either of you started with. That is a divine, wonderful, happy, supportive, co-creative process where everybody is kind of building on everybody else's ideas. As everybody becomes clearer and clearer, and we move towards some better solution than any of us could have come up with. But that does not satisfy the ego's agenda of feeling valued. All it does is solve the problems. Oh my God! You mean we're going to shift our focus from our egos to solving our problems? That's the shift. Now, I talk about in the book that we are all co-creating constantly. And we're co-creating with the universe, as I've mentioned, not only the human universe, but also the animals, the weather, all of that. Now, we are doing it whether we like it or not. When we make the shift into becoming co-creative, we are calling upon ourselves to go from this unconscious co-creative process, which we're all engaged in, to a conscious co-creative process where we say, let's do this together. Why don't you, Dad, why don't you and I sit down and look at what we want to accomplish here? You know, what is it that we want to feel when we're at home? How can we best achieve that feeling? Well, I like things to be sloppy because that's what makes me feel creative and comfortable. So then we need to have a sloppy area. Or I need order or I can't think. Or let's look at the whole environment and let's test it out and say, oh my God, we all feel better when there's order. Isn't that interesting? Well, what can we do? So we start out with harmonizing our intentions. That is one of the tricks to becoming consciously co-creative, is that we harmonize our intentions. If we are at cross intention, cross purposes, then it's always going to be a battle of wills. But if we say, what is it that we need to, what is it that we're trying to experience? We may find out that our intentions are not in harmony in any way. We should break up. We shouldn't even live together. Or we can't do this project because we don't have harmonious intention. And harmonizing our intentions, which I don't talk about in the book because the phrase just came to me a second ago, I think. When we harmonize our intentions, it may not be that as when we start out that our intentions are in harmony, but sometimes in the process of talking and getting clear and getting to, well, what is it? What is it? What is it? We discover that we do have the same intention, or that each one of our intentions can move 2 degrees to something which is a deeper intention that we both really have. For example, let's say I'm the parent and I want my children to be quiet. My intention when I come home is to shut the kids up and shut the wife up, for example. Because I want to feel peace when I get home. Hand me a beer and turn on the game. And so, my wife's intention may be to connect, because she's been alone all day with the kids. Okay, we seem to have disharmonious intentions. One wants communication and connection, and the other one wants peace and quiet and aloneness. Well, supposing we were to sit down together and let's find out, well, what is it that we both really need? What are we looking for? Well, we may discover that the guy who comes home, or the woman who comes home and the husband's taking care of the kids, whoever is coming home actually wants to feel loved and safe because they've had a tough day. And they believe that the only way to have that is to go into aloneness. You know, that the TV is man's best friend. Because the guy is completely convinced that the moment that he connects to the wife, or the woman connects to the husband, that they're going to hear the litany of problems like Johnny peed in his pants, the neighbor is parked in front of the door again and needs to be dealt with, the bills aren't paid, and oh, by the way, the roof is leaking. So to the person who's coming home, this feels like a bombardment of undesirable information. And so what the person's really avoiding is not the connection with the spouse, but the person is avoiding or trying to avoid is more pressure and more stress. So if we were to determine that that's the whole thing, well, then the person who's been staying home dealing with all these stresses all day is also wants less stress. And that person's way of getting less stress is to dump the stress on the spouse. So I've been with the kids all day, and they're not doing their homework, or they're whatever it is. I just found out that our 13-year-old daughter's pregnant. So I want to share that news immediately with you so that I can take the stress off me and put it on you. So what is happening is both you, who's coming home, and the wife, who is at home, are wanting safety, are looking to de-stress, and we have opposite intentions, it appears, but we really have the same intentions. Well, what do? We could say, all right, before we talk about anything, why don't we hug? Why don't we feel connected? Oh yeah, I might like that. I don't want to hear anything about problems until we've connected first. Then I feel loved and supported, and now let's talk about it. And the person who's staying home needs that adult companionship, needs to feel like they've got somebody there with them. And so they want the same thing. So instead of going, saying, let me just let go for one moment. Unless, of course, the house is burning, in which case I think it's better to mention it. Although my personal feeling is that hug first, get the fire later. But, just 1 second to hug so that you can face the fire. But most things can wait a second or two. So why don't we do that right now? Why doesn't everybody here take a moment to connect to the other people in the room? Because there's a lot of stress around the topic.
How? By giving somebody a hug?
Give them a hug, give them a look. Hi, honey. Now, if you're out there watching and you don't have anybody with you, of course, if you have somebody with you, do the hugging, connecting thing. But if you don't have anybody with you, just envision yourself hugging us. Okay, everybody, we're all going to hug whoever is out there. If you're out there. Hello. Hi. How are you? Ah. It's amazing how often, if we go just below the surface, we discover that our intention is the same, or at least harmonious. The ego often will tell us, oh, what you really need is peace and quiet, or what you really need is the kids to kiss your feet, or everybody to look up at you, towards you when you come home and say, oh, daddy's home, isn't he great? Or you really need validation, or, when what we really need is love. And we can all get that. And can we co-create that experience? But we have to be able to talk about it. I'm thinking about the United Nations now, or political negotiations on an international plane. And wouldn't it be great if every one of those diplomats walked in and got honest and said, you know, I'm worried about my wife, I think she's cheating on me, you know, I'm worried that I'm not going to come home with a certain kind of agreement, and I'm going to lose face, or I'm going to lose my job, or blah, 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 blah. And we started every international confab with a conversation about what's really going on. And what is everybody's intention, as it has been hijacked by the ego, is like, okay, so my intention is to come into this thing and prove myself, rather than that my intention is to come in here and solve a problem, that these people need water, or that, you know, there's unnecessary suffering here, or we seem to be at each other's throats about this land. And why? Why do we need this land? Why exactly do we need this land? Can somebody please tell me why we need this land? If we could get that honest, both about our personal intentions and agendas as we go into these negotiations and what is really going on in our nation, instead of just justifying and justifying and justifying and justifying. I've taken a position. This is a matter of national pride, otherwise known as collective ego. Are you feeling this powerful, oh my God, I'm so dizzy I can't even think. There's a very powerful chi energy that's...
I feel it.
And yet, most of us come into every situation with an assumption of disharmony. We don't assume oneness. There it is again. We go into negotiations assuming that we're on opposite sides. Labor and management. Parent-teacher conversations even can degenerate to that. Kids and their parents, spouses. Us and the Martians. You know, we assume that we're on opposite sides. And so co-creation isn't even in our thinking. It's like, how am I going to win my points and get what I was sent here to achieve? Business negotiations. How much is this? How much are you going to charge me? Okay, now we're all tense. It's one thing if there's a price, but it's another if it's a negotiation, like a car or a motorhome or a house, where there's going to be a negotiation. We assume that we're on opposite sides. And even the way things are often set up, it makes it almost impossible to truly negotiate. I don't get to, James and I are buying a house. I don't get to talk to the seller. I have to talk to the agent who talks to the agent who talks to the seller. If I'm lucky, the offer is presented by the agent to the seller and the seller's agent. I always want to talk to the seller. When I have an opportunity, I do. It's like, let's sit down and talk about this. What are you really trying to achieve here? When I bought Streamhaven, this house, it was just like that. The guy and I were neighbors, and we were both trying to figure out how to get this thing accomplished when the market was terrible. I couldn't sell my house, he couldn't sell his house. And we would, every couple of weeks, we'd talk about, okay, how's it going? Well, I'm going to lower my price. Well, I'm going to do this. And how are you going to, you know, we were trying to figure out how to get me into this house. Of course, his first interest was to sell his house. My interest was to be the one that he could sell to. But he had an interest in me being able to sell it also, because he didn't have anybody else. So in that moment, we were able to harmonize interests. Well, in fact, we even got to the point that we were going to swap houses. He was going to buy my house and I was going to buy his, but the universe intervened at the very last minute in the most amazing co-creative process, where the appraiser came in and gave my house such a low appraisal that the deal fell through, which was a perfect co-creation by the universe, because the executive director and what's your title now? Director of Public Information for the Stream ended up moving into that house, and had the other guy been able to buy it, and that wouldn't have happened. So there is which brings me to the next point. Higher consciousness. Isn't it possible that the frustration of our agendas has a purpose, that there is some higher intelligence at work? And I'm going to be talking about that more in depth, I believe, next time when I get to the how we become co-creative. But one of the values of acknowledging co-creation is that we have that possibility at that moment to take a breath and think, maybe really this is working out in a better way. I've seen parents pushing their kids to get into the best school or whatever, where that child is not going to succeed. That child needs to be in the school they're in, or in a different place, because they can't handle that kind of pressure, or because they're not up to that level of speed of processing, so that everybody's going to get ahead of them. They're going to lose their confidence, and it isn't right for them. And yet we get so stuck on the idea that we know what's best that we will go fight for it. How do we know we're supposed to win? Because again, we're co-creating with the universe. And so here's a point that I'd like to get across, and I feel the energy of it, and I hope that I can, it's a very simple thought, so you can say, oh, what's the big deal? But I know that there's a huge, powerful energy behind it. If we can go into everything with intention and allowance, where we always know that on some level there is a possibility that what we think should happen is not what should happen. If we could allow that simple idea to penetrate us, our stress level would reduce dramatically. Someone is suing me. I've got to stop them. I've got to win. I've got to defeat theirs. Maybe not. Maybe I'm supposed to lose. I don't know why. Maybe because it's the thing that's going to push me into bankruptcy, which is what I really need to do. And by doing that, I can have a fresh start. And I'll look back on this 5 years later and see that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I've heard that so often with cancer survivors who say, oh my God, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I changed because of that cancer. And yet, if someone had given you the choice at the time, oh, okay, cancer, not cancer, which would you have chosen? And our inability to accept that we are co-creating with the universe is what stops us, because the ego fights the ego. So it looks like, if you win the suit against me, you son of a bitch, you have won, and I can't let that happen because you did this to me and me and me and I and we. So this is the point that I'm trying to make. If we realize that we are co-creating with the universe, it becomes less personal. And then the ego is less triggered. Like, yes, this horrible experience was meant to happen. And you might have been the agent for that horrible experience to happen. One more time, you do something annoying. And if I think about it as I and you, then I am in the ego, fighting your ego, blaming your ego, being angry with your ego for this inconvenience. And when I say you are not doing this, you are an agent of the universe. And it is the universe that is doing this to me. Or as I could think of it, as God is doing it, a source is doing it, or higher consciousness is doing it, no matter how bad it looks. Then I don't have to fight you because you have no power anyway. You probably can't even help what you're doing. Poor slob. You know, I often have thought that people who are very despised, at some point despised, terrible dictators or serial killers or whatever it is, you know, I look at them and I think about the terrible things that they do, and I wonder what awful karma they're working off, that they have to live a life like that, where they have to experience that hatred, dread, and fear from others, or being despised by others. What a painful job that is in this universe, to be them. It's hard enough to be me. I can't even imagine what it's like to be, you know, a serial rapist, you know, who's on trial and has to watch person after person say, you did this, I accuse you, and have it proved, and just watch that. Awful. Can't imagine. But anyway, beyond that issue of having compassion for the human being that's inside that, there's also, how I see it, is that we are in fact co-creating with the universe. I mean, the universe seems to do its thing, and we seem to be moved along by it. And so do other people. And when we can allow that, even if it means the crops fail and we all starve, when we can allow that in some way, not say I like it, but just be an allowance of it, then there's less likelihood that our egos are going to be triggered, and more likelihood that we will be relaxed. And if we are relaxed, we will actually be able to cope with the serial killer, with the failed crops, with everything, because in a state of relaxation, we're more creative. So everything is a co-creation with the universe, because everything is part of the universe that is co-creating with us. That guy, that asshole who blocks us on the freeway has, you know, was smoking dope and had an accident, and therefore I'm late and I didn't get to my daughter's bar mitzvah or whatever it is on time. That guy is an agent of the universe. Now that guy needs to deal with the reality that his smoking dope has caused danger and damage, and we'll get into accountability more in Platform 7. And so everybody needs to be held accountable for their part. And can we hold that paradox in our mind? That everybody is accountable for everything that they do. They have to be held accountable for their part. And at the same time, we're all being moved by universal forces, and that we can not react in an egoic way to that. Is that possible? What I'd like us to do, even though this is the talk segment, is, since this is a co-creative talk segment, is I'd like you to think of some situation where you need to co-create with somebody, and that you've personalized things, and that it becomes you versus them. So if you're in the audience here, or if you're out there, and you know, those who are here, we can do some sharing. And if you're out there and you're watching this video, you know, try to think of something that comes to you, and you'll probably relate to something that's going on here.
You say it again.
Some situation where you're co-creating with the universe, but you're personalizing it. It's me and them, and therefore you're in the ego, and you're either feeling domination or submission. Yeah, come right up. Christopher's first.
So I can see I do this with Elizabeth all the time. And my ego has me go into a superior mode instead of a co-creation mode. And that I am actually seeing myself in real life form. In other words, she is me, I am her. And instead of relating to her, which is usually what my primary fear is that I'm not being related to.
Right.
What I do is I don't relate. And so I get to amplify the very suffering that I'm going through.
Right.
And by not relating to her, I don't help acknowledge that her pain that she's having, because we are one. And all that happens is like you could say what I do is I squander the universe's resources by not embracing the now that is right there of the collective healing that is taking place between her and I as a co-creation with the universe. And the universe has to squander its energies now to go ahead and rearrange that, to put it in my life again, so I can have the experience, so I can embrace it. So if I could actually learn to do that in the moment,
The first time.
and pay attention, which is what I'm really, really working on doing, then I would actually be supporting and co-creating the universe and owning and taking accountability and responsibility for my part of it, and be a part of the solution instead of the perpetual problem.
I have that. Well, here's the other half.
The other half.
So I think in segue to that,
Step closer.
in segue to that, how I respond is I get angry and separate because I feel like the connection is not happening. I get hard on myself for not relating, and I get reprimanded that I'm not relating, and I just spiral downward more. And so this co-creation just doesn't happen. And so I think I go more into like a submission mode,
Yeah,
and by doing that I try to manipulate
right.
the circumstances.
Right, exactly. Christopher goes into the domination mode and you go into the submission mode. And there is no co-creation, there is no universe. And the ego is busy.
Quite. In both parties.
In its own universe.
Right, it's only, the immature ego. The ego firstborn, not twice-born.
Is that the me universe?
That would be you, Jenny.
Yeah. Well, I related to what you said about sometimes your intention will be thwarted, and that's the universe coming back also. So I think the area that I'm in us versus them is me and my children around the state of our home environment. Which looks like, the toy monster threw up in like half the rooms of the house. And the toy monster, the monster filled with toys that goes up and vomits toys everywhere.
AKA Luke and Aiden.
And so it's personal. I mean, this is personal.
Right, right.
This is not the universe of co-creation. It's them versus me.
Right.
And I am going to win this one. That's how it goes down, right? And I get upset. I get upset at myself for being dominating. I get upset with them for being withholding and dominating back. And so there's so many parts of this talk that I could see that relate to this situation. First, that yes, I am personalizing that. When you talked about, we could look at, well, what do we need in this home environment and seeing if the intentions are harmonious. Like, I never considered that someone could actually need sloppiness, or maybe there is an area, or maybe they don't. Maybe they need it, the order, as much as I do, and I think that they're just out to get me versus actually looking at is there a harmonious intention? Is there some training that they need to be able to develop that habit, instead of the training being me blowing up every 7 to 10 days that it's gone out of order again, and so I think that I need to have a conversation. And what's really funny is last night we were helping Todd redo from last CBC or last spiritual service, where he was supposed to break a negative association with his dad being angry with him. He didn't really happen in the spiritual service, so we tried to do it at dinner last night. And we saw his dad being angry at him for leaving his bike in the driveway, and instead having a conversation with him. And in that moment, channeling his dad, I was able to be very connected to him and related, and talking about, taking care of your belongings and the fact that it could get damaged, and really caring.
Right.
And then the next morning, Todd was like, God, it'd be really good if we could be that way with our kids.
Right.
And then the next morning, it's not there.
Right.
So it came in at the end. It came in at the end when I saw just what a total jerk I was being. But so everything you've said today totally applies to me in this situation. and so what I'm trying to do is allow what it feels like the failure I've had in accomplishing my goal of having a tidy house to be a lesson, and that maybe I need to approach it a different way. Maybe there's a time now to learn how to co-create.
Right, that the universe has co-created that failure in order for you to change the way you relate to your children. Did everybody get that?
Yeah.
The universe co-created the failure in order to help her develop a different way of relating to her children, which may be something that comes up for you, Kim, about a different way of relating to your dad.
Oh, I thought you were going to mention the incident.
The incident? I don't know about the incident, so...
Yes, you do.
Oh, no, I wasn't going to mention the incident. Okay. You can if you want to.
Richard and I had an example recently of being angry at the universe for something that came up when we couldn't keep our Kaiser insurance because Kaiser doesn't cover this zip code, which we were just ranting, and I was
That's
ranting.
medical insurance for those of you
Right,
who
medical
don't know.
insurance. I was ranting and raving that that's so stupid, and we loved our Kaiser insurance and we thought it was so horrible, and we're having to pay more money to get a different kind of insurance, and and why didn't Richard fight Social Security? And because they're the ones that decided it, and I mean it was just on and on. And then a couple of weeks later, our daughter came to us and said, I'm ready for drug treatment, even though I've been sober 7 months, I'm just floundering. And she'd tried Kaiser Insurance 4 years ago, the program they had, and it just was not right for her. And Richard found this new program that is covered by our new insurance. And she's gone to it and loves it.
Great.
Oh, wonderful.
And we would not have had that. We would not have been able to afford to send her to this program that is run by therapists instead of, just run by people that have been in AA forever. It's run by therapists, and it's a spiritual, holistic program. I mean, it's just amazing. And we would not have been able to provide it if the universe had not taken away our other insurance.
This is another domestic situation. I came home from work the other day, and my partner wasn't there, and saw all these dirty dishes on the sink. It's kind of like the toy monster. And I immediately went into judgment, and that those had been left, and we really need to discuss this, and we need to talk, and what principle is involved here. And as I was in my head about that, I happened to notice that some of the dirty dishes were mine.
Well. The culprit has been identified.
It was so funny, and I remembered how I had left the dirty dishes because I was really struggling to get out to work, to be at work on time, and that was the priority. And so I laughed to myself and started washing the dishes, and realized that actually at work I'm sitting all day and standing up and washing dishes and creating order really was very supportive. and I was enjoying it, and I sent, because I realized the judgment could have been harmful to Erica, so I sent her chi and enjoyed my little dishes doing, and forgot about it, and Erica came home, I don't know, an hour or two later, and she came in and saw the kitchen cleaned up, and she said, "Oh, I left my dirty dishes here." And, it was such a, I so appreciated that connection that we had about the impact we have on one another and how to heal it.
About 2 years ago, my younger brother started coming down with Alzheimer's, and it was, you would be around him and you have a conversation with him, and 5 minutes later he would forgot that you had the conversation. And just recently, he started to rant and rave about me. And he was, and I heard it from other people. I heard it from my brother and my sister-in-law, and I thought, well, he's just got it's just an organic thing. What does it have to do with me? And if I thought about it, I would actually got a little defensive about it. What did I do? So I was listening to Making an Amends. And I started looking at, and I can see this held in this content. What is the universe telling me? What does this have to do with me? So I started looking back and going back and thinking about times where I'd actually tormented him in ways. And I could see, it seems like the way I would dominate him is I would find weaknesses in him, and when I would point them out and I would use them to make me strong. And it wasn't anything that was particularly easy to see in some ways, but I just started looking at it. So I used it as an opportunity to actually see how I guess I can use the word co-create here, because I actually got underneath and made amends in ways that I hadn't seen, and I'd done things. And it just seemed to, I took this into our men's group and into our morning group, and looked at ways of actually making amends to him, maybe on a psychic plane, and making apologies, and really going down deep and seeing some of the things that I'd done that this was bringing up inside of me that I hadn't seen before. So I think that is a way of co-creating.
That's right.
And actually I had to pause and go into things in areas I didn't want to go into, and didn't want to feel and didn't want to acknowledge certain things about myself in my relationship with him. And I had to go into that self-compassion and see, where did that come from? And I could see how I did that, and have compassion for myself, and then have compassion for him, and actually see him in some. I could see his face in some of those times, and actually see myself over there in that same pain. And I was over here prodding it, and it was like, so there was a certain oneness in that. And so I don't know if that relates, but it just felt like
it does.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's very good. In fact, just for information, the amends step that Jim was talking about is in Platform 7, Becoming Accountable. We also have the amends step at the back of the book in the tools section. That is exactly the point. If we can transcend our immediate egoic reactions, and to see that we're co-creating with the universe, that the universe was conspiring to create a situation where you would get more self-awareness and develop more self-compassion and make amends.
I had one more thing I could see about that, because it came up with me earlier, and that word came to me when you were talking, and it really is a conscious pause. I actually had to ask the universe, and literally it was almost like a prayer. What are you trying to show me about myself?
Yeah.
And pause in that, and be willing to keep dropping a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And I actually did this over the process of about 3 different nights.
Yeah.
And I had the time where I was actually devoted to it. And then I went in other areas and did amends with other things. But it really allowed me to see and have some depth. And one of the things it took me into is an internal pain that I didn't want to go into. So really it was like turning me back on myself and saying, dropping to that place where you could you could feel the pain that he was in at the time you were inflicting it on him, if I can use that word, but because it really felt like it was an infliction in some ways.
Yeah.
And I was really inflicting on myself, and I didn't want to feel that. So it really took a pause and an intentionality to go into it, if that makes sense.
Yes, that's very good.
I'd like to share. One of the biggest lessons for me in this whole topic is dealing with thwarted will. My will gets thwarted over and over and over and over. And so I've had to learn that maybe there's a directional signal there. Like when I departed from my hypnotherapeutic career and went back into being an attorney, and I kept suffering defeat after defeat after defeat. Thinking, gee, is there a directional signal here? And then finally I shifted gears. And so my will getting thwarted can be a very good thing.
Yeah.
And I have a tendency to just want to override, dominate, make it happen, make it happen. And I've done that in my parenting, and I've had to back off and say, wait a minute, I can't impose my will here. What is the divine fragment that my daughter is trying to unfold here that I can support and not just try to dominate the situation and make her life work better, that kind of thing. So to embrace, to welcome the thwarting of the will, say, whoa, my will got thwarted. I wonder why. Maybe I should change direction here. So that's been a big learning for me. I'm reminded of something. In football, there was a famous coach, Vince Lombardi, who once said, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. Now imagine the pressure. If the only thing is winning, the pressure going through life, and in our society we're taught you got to win, you got to compete, you got to be first, you got to be the best, you got to get the job, the salary, whatever, you got to win. And imagine what life can be like letting go of all that pressure. Say, okay, I didn't win. Hey, maybe there's a reason I didn't win. Maybe that's for my highest good. Hallelujah.
Yeah. And maybe our offer will not be accepted and we will not get that house. There's a lot of people who are distressed because every time I go towards something, 2 minutes later I'm saying, okay, but if it doesn't happen, or maybe this isn't, or maybe that's not supposed to be, and they think that I'm changing my mind and being crazy, which I do change my mind and I am crazy, but but setting that aside for the moment, it's really that once you intend, you have to let go. It's like you intend and then you have to go into the allowance immediately. You put the offer out there and you've got to let go. Now, I'm not saying that I can do this all the time perfectly. In fact, sometimes I can't do it at all. And sometimes I do it really well, and usually it's somewhere in between. But I do know that reduces a lot of stress. When I can be in more acceptance of that the universe is going to do what it is going to do anyway. And for me as a spiritual person, meaning that I have a faith in some kind of spiritual intelligence, I have the advantage of having that faith even if it's not real. I've often thought, I'm probably making up that there is a God and that there is a plan. I'm probably making the whole thing up, but who cares? Because if I believe that, I'm more relaxed. If I'm more relaxed, I do a better job and I have a better life. So I don't care if I'm making it up. I want the end result of making that up, which is that being in more serenity. And serenity is not an easy thing for me to achieve. Maybe it is for you, but for me it's kind of tough. And to be able to really intend powerfully and then to go into allowance is an amazing experience, because in that moment I need to be very strong in my intention. If I am strong in my intention, one of the things that hangs us up, and I'd like to move now into this next focus, which is we're not just intending and allowing with the universe and with other people. We have different aspects of ourselves that are battling it out. There may be only one aspect of me that's intending something, and there's another part of me that's intending the opposite. And how do I come into harmony with myself to harmonize my own intention? And this is the place where I think that the people who talk about, creating reality, I think they're right in that what they're really trying to get to is the inner conflicts and how they play out in our lives. And sometimes when our intention is thwarted, it's because our intention isn't clear. Sometimes our intention is thwarted because it's not meant to happen, or because there's other countervailing intentions. And I want to get to that concept in a minute. But first I want to stay with this. It's like, what is my intention in any given situation? Let's say, I'm making an offer on this house. I really love the house. I really want the house. Well, there's another part of me that says, I don't need a house. I don't want the bills. I don't need the stress. And I really wish that the whole thing would, that I could find a rental and forget about it. And that's there. And I acknowledge that. Okay, there's an inner conflict in my intention. So then if I were practicing what I'm preaching, I would say, okay, how can I harmonize my own intention? Well, what I'm really looking for in getting this house is a place for my spirit to reside that is truly supportive. And for some reason, I have the idea that owning a house will offer me that more because I can do what I want. And actually in our situation, it seems better because I don't have to worry about a landlord who's saying, what do you mean you're going to have a retreat in the living room and there are going to be 50 cars on the grass? We can put 50 cars on the grass if we want to, if it's our house, right? So there's a lot of reason and rationale that would say that owning a house is better. But how do I know that there isn't a house out there that I won't find until this escrow falls through 2 months from now? That isn't even on the market yet. That when the escrow falls through, that house will appear that happens to have a landlord who wants a retreat center. It could happen, you know what I'm saying? So if I'm saying, well, what I'm really intending is to have a place where my spirit can reside comfortably and that I can do my work or whatever, then I'm looking for that, and I'm not necessarily looking for that house or the ownership or whatever, that's what I'm looking for. And that I can come back to that as the intention. And if I'm putting myself in a situation where the financial stress is going to be so bad that I'm not going to be able to do my work because I'm too busy trying to make money, then that is going to be thwarted by getting my intention. If I own the house, I may, in fact, be thwarting my true intention. So to be able to intend not to buy that house, but to intend to find the right place, and then turn over to the universe what that looks like, then it's, I've noticed that with people when they're looking for dates, they're looking to meet somebody and then they make this laundry list of and they may be missing the perfect person because they have an idea, because they haven't really looked deeply enough in themselves to find out what it is they're really looking for. And then to trust the universe is going to somehow meet that intention, but it may not look the way we intended it to look. I can say for sure that no man I've ever been with has been what I intended. And yet,
That's hysterical for me personally.
So, but if I let go of my ego's ideas of what my intention is and I look at, okay, someone that I resonate with on a soul level or where I can have the experiences that I need to grow, oh yeah, I got that in spades. What is the true intention? What is my soul's intention? Maybe my ass wants comfort, but my soul wants growth. Yeah. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe my mind is looking for challenge, but my spirit is seeking peace. Yeah. And what I've noticed in life is that nothing is ever the way it looks anyway. I never really know what I'm doing. as the Kaiser example is so perfect. It's, we really think we're going out for medical insurance, but what you're really doing is looking for a lifeline for your daughter, and you didn't even know it. But that the universe knew something about what your real intention was and what your real need was. And, we can only hope that that will work, and yet, your daughter may then go out and, and after 3 weeks in this program, go shoot heroin and end up on the street. And then we have to be able to find the wisdom in that, to be able to be an allowance of what happens. I'd like to speak briefly about something I believe that I brought up in the beginning. What occurs in life is the result of the collective intention. Co-creation is the way the universe works. It is the result of the intersection of the intentions of all involved. To practice co-creation is to be in harmony with this process. The intersection of all of our intentions. Now, I've been speaking up to this point about a deeply spiritual approach to intention, where we have the opportunity to come together and say, what is your real intention? What is your real intention? And see if we can find true harmonization. But in the big world, in the objective world, where we don't have an opportunity to do that, what it looks like, or what we can achieve at least, is whatever the co-creation, the intersection of all of our intentions. And the example that came to me, the image for that came to me once some years ago was in high school physics. I learned one thing that actually stuck, which is it was vector analysis, and it had to do with forces that intersect. Okay, so the Mack truck is going down the road at 75 miles an hour, and the Pinto, which is a tiny car that doesn't even exist anymore, okay, whatever exists now, the bicycle, everybody can relate to that, is going down the road, at 2 miles an hour, and they intersect, and what's going to happen? Clearly the Mack truck is going to be veered less off its course than the guy on the bicycle, who's going to be splattered. Now, the Mack truck might get more veered off the course because the intention of the driver may be to avoid the pedestrian or the bicyclist, so that he may move it. But if the truck itself is just going in this direction and it hits the bicyclist, it's going to be impacted. But which is going to be impacted more? And so if you think about the force of intention, and now if you have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 separate intentions, a Mack truck, a Toyota pickup, a guy in a bicycle, a woman with a baby carriage, somebody in a mid-sized vehicle, and they all crash together at some intersection, there is a mathematical way of determining what the trajectory is going to be. How is this all going to play out? Now, if we understood everything in the universe, and we understood its force, its intention, and its momentum, we could know what is going to happen at any given moment, because we could analyze all the factors that are coming together. I would know that when I get on the freeway that there is a guy who just left his house, and he had too much to drink last night, and he's going to fall asleep at the wheel, and he's going to end up careening into me, and this is going to happen at 7:02, and the only reason it's at 7:02 is because the traffic will have slowed down, because we're coming to some terrible intersection where there's some freeway, and there's going to be 4 drops of rain that's going to stop everybody, and so on and so on and so on, and a bird is going to fly by right at that moment. I'm going to blink, and I'm going to get hit, right? And all of that can be measured and determined, but we don't know. See, because I didn't know about the guy, and I don't know about the bird, and I don't know about the drop of water, and I don't know exactly how many other people are going to be on the freeway at the same time who are going to be intersecting to slow me down, so that I happen to be there when this guy comes across, hits me. Whereas if I had left the house 2 minutes before or 2 minutes later, if my child hadn't nagged me and annoyed me and delayed me at the door, I could have been 2 minutes later, earlier. All these factors that over which I have, no control. All of this is going to determine whether or not I'm the one looking at the accident or I'm the one in the accident. I mean, that's reality, isn't it? It is the intersection. So if you think about these as intentions, which is of course a broad way of looking at it, you know, the drop of rain intends to fall. The guy also is intending to get to work despite the hangover. He's, you know, he says, oh my God, I got to go to work today because I've got bills to pay when I really should stay home. But his intention to go out and make a living is stronger than his common sense. And he hits the road, and everybody decides that they're going to be early to work, which is why everybody's jammed up on the freeway at 7 instead of at 7:15. Everybody intended to get to work early that day, or the boss, everybody's boss came to them and said, you have to come into work early tomorrow, because they have an intention of meeting some deadline that came down to them from somebody in Germany that they don't even know. I mean, think about it, really. Isn't that what it is? That co-created that moment in time, where the Mack truck and the guy in the bicycle and the woman with the baby carriage and all of that are intersecting, or in this case is me and the guy, you know, in the car who fell asleep at the wheel. Everything comes together in that moment. All of those intentions come together in that moment and determine what's going to happen. And that's the reality of co-creation. We can fight it. We can accept it. I give it a spiritual interpretation in order to allow it. Otherwise, I'd be angry all the time. I don't know if it's true that there's a spiritual, that the spiritual interpretation has any validity. Because we can get up and tell 25 stories about co-creation with the universe where everything ended up fucked. But on the other hand, you know, maybe those terrible consequences have other consequences that are unforeseen, but, you know, being a spiritual person as I am, I want to interpret things positively just for my own peace of mind. So I will look at that and say, this is meant to be, boing. You know, this coming together of all of these intentions in this moment to have this outcome is what is meant to be. And I have to allow that, or I am going to have an upset stomach from the time I'm born till the time I'm dead. And then there'll be acid reflux even after I'm dead. Yeah, because that's the way the world is. Now, if we get that, if we understand that that's the way the world is, then we can make a decision that we want to work with the world being that way. What can we do to consciously co-create for a better future instead of just passively sitting there and saying, oh, well, somebody's going to hit me anyway because, you know, it's 7:02 and they were, you know what I'm saying? You know, I don't want to be that way. I don't want to come out of this saying, I've resigned myself. Everything is just going to happen the way it's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. Because my intention is in there too. And I can unify and strengthen my intention, and I can go to you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and I can say, why don't we all intend to stop driving when we're drunk? Let's start a movement called Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. Things change because of the collective intention that they will change and they can change. Oh, we haven't taken every drunk off the road, but there's a lot fewer drunks on the road than there used to be. We actually enforce the law now when it used to be, oh, well, he's just drunk. Like that was okay. Those of us who are old enough to remember know that there was a time when it was considered perfectly normal to get into your car drunk. Now they're supposed to be beer, exactly, drive with a beer in hand. Now you're supposed to have a designated driver. It means something. We can work together. If we get it, that what happens is the result of the collective intention, we can strengthen the collective nature of any intention. That's why we go out as organizers. That's why we speak. That's why we keep trying. I don't care how many times a good idea bounces against the wall and bounces back in your face. Every time we go out and we speak and we change and we support other people to change, we are increasing the power of the collective intention to make a change. So that after a while, the right thing, or the good thing, or the more productive thing, or the more helpful thing becomes the Mack truck? Why does the Mack truck always have to be the bad thing that happens? Oh, I was hit by them, boing. Things that there was so much negative energy in the room, I felt like I was hit by a truck. Boink. Well, what about when there's so much positive energy in the room that I feel like I've been hit by a Mack truck and lifted to the heavens? Why can't we co-create that world? That's the question I'm asking. And how do we do it? All right, I think we're ready to close. Are we ready to close?
Yes.
Does anybody feel inspired to increase the collective intention to happen what needs to happen?
Yes.
And let's do our part.
Absolutely.
Have you ever seen a group of ants carrying something and you say, oh my God, how did they do it? I'm an ant and I'm signing up.
I'm an ant. The ant movement.
This song, this song that can't move the rubber tree plant.
Whatever that was.
Usually you sing a song, you've missed many opportunities.
I have. All right.
Here we go.
So we're closing, and let's feel the power, because the universe has an intention to evolve. I believe that, even if it isn't true. I believe it. And I want to support that, and the ego is going to evolve because it already has. And I'm going to keep feeding that intention, feeding it. And not get discouraged every time splat happens. It's just part of the process. Yes.
Yes. All right.
Very nice.